today from Diana Adams Law, is that correct? Am I getting that right? Andy Izenson.
Thank you. Is it okay if I stand up too? I feel like I'm playing peekaboo at this podium. Not a tall guy. Okay, here we go.
Notice how the lawyers want to stand up. We can't help ourselves.
We spent all day sitting down. It gets tiring. So thanks everyone for your patience. I'm sorry I wandered in late. I was just in Boston yelling at some law students about parentage rights for non-biological parents from state to state, which you all missed, which is fine. I can sum it up for you. It's a crapshoot. That's the entire gist of the thing is like, you should probably get a second parent adoption. If you don't get a second parent adoption, it is definitely a crapshoot. If you do get a second parent adoption, it's still probably a crapshoot. So, I'm really excited to be on this roundtable with practitioners that I admire so very much. Especially following you, Professor Erdman. Hugh told me about your book when we were talking, and I went and I got it, and I was ready. At first, I was really excited to be on a panel with you, and then I was like, crap, there's nothing I can say that isn't like way better articulated in this book. So it's great to be following the act of neither the first nor the last scene in the book that made me tear up in a public place. Thanks. But you did mention the poly thing, and so that's the direction we're gonna take this. Hi, I'm the poly thing. I work in non-traditional family law. It's a term that we all kind of hate, but no one has figured out a better alternative to. What we mean by that is working with families that are not really understood by the law because they don't look the way the law thinks a family should look. And that means a lot of different things. It means queer families, it means polyamorous families, it means families who are cohabiting because of being low income, it means families who are in any respect not living in the sort of mom and dad who are married, who are both cis, who are monogamous, who are living in a family unit in an owned home with their biological children and nobody else. Any family other than that is how we understand our client base. And so that job, for me, has two parts. One part is the direct representation part, actually working with these families, clients coming to us and saying, how do we protect our families? And then advocacy, which is more yelling. And so for the first part, it's kind of cool because it's only been in the last couple of years that the answer to that question has been anything other than hysterical laughter that slowly devolves into sobbing. But now what we're doing is understanding it as a two-part job. The first part of the direct representation is about what Professor Erdman would describe as contracts and deals. It's the intra-family stuff, helping the people who are members of the family as they understand it, clarify and elucidate and effectuate their agreements, their autonomy, their work together within the bounds of the family. And then the other part of the work is looking at what's necessary and possible to smooth the movement of that family unit through the institutions that it has to interact with as it moves through the world. The state, hospitals, schools, the criminal justice system, the court system. What interactions with those institutions do we anticipate? What are we worried about? And how can we smooth them to the extent possible? So those are the two sides of that work, the intra-family stuff and the dealing with the world stuff. And then the advocacy part of the work also has two parts. I do a lot of cultural competency trainings, mostly for other lawyers. And the cultural competency is basically saying, so these people that you think are completely incomprehensible to you, who you think that you could possibly share any motivations in common, and you have no idea how to serve them effectively or with care, and so couldn't bother trying, their motivations are really not that different from yours. Which leads into the second part of that advocacy, which is being loudly and obnoxiously out and open about everything that I am in that work. And so going to places like the New York State Bar Association and saying, hey, so we talk about transgender people, we talk about queer people, we talk about people living in non-traditional families, we talk about polyamorous people, as if they are aliens. And as if their legal needs are, don't overlap at all with the legal needs of regular people. And as someone who is all of those things, I'm here to tell you it's not actually that different, right? What do queer parents want? Stability in their parent-child relationships. They want to have their children not taken away. Pretty sure that's the same thing straight parents want, and so forth. And so in doing that work, part of it for me is being very obnoxious and loud and fearless about what my family looks like and my life looks like, and the way that my family as this sort of amorphous, complicatedly global, interconnected molecule of different types of mutual care and interdependences that are structured with intention and that are not, that don't have a hard boundary between how we understand our family and how we understand our community. And that's a really important part of it, particularly in, and this is a slight deviation, but I have a captive audience, so hey. This is particularly important in how my family, as composed of mostly transgender and gender nonconforming people, understands itself as placed within and inextricable from the transgender community, because that experience and understanding of family for us is, it cannot be disentangled from being trans, because it is an active resistance to living in a world that tells trans and gender nonconforming people that they are unworthy of love and that they don't deserve to have a family. We have to love each other because nobody else is going to do it. So that's part of how I understand family, and it informs my work as well. So, after Obergefell happened, the complicated and weird and impossible to navigate patchwork of incompatible legal standards that was LGBTQ family law transformed into a different complicated and weird patchwork of incompatible legal standards. And part of what that looked like was this big dissent that Justice Roberts did, where he said, well, this is what Scalia has been warning us about all along. He said it was going to be the gays, and then the polyamorous people, and then the people who wanted to marry goats, and then children, and then toasters, and the fall of Western civilization, and then we're done for it. And Roberts said, Scalia warned us about this, and here it is. Now the polyamorous people are next. Scalia told you, if he were alive right now, he would be laughing. I don't think he would be, actually. And so everybody was very alarmed, and they were like, is it true? Is polyamorous marriage next? Let's ask the expert. And they called me, which is weird. And they were like, is it true? Is polyamorous marriage next? And I said, I mean, the legal logic is sound, right? The legal logic behind Obergefell was that parents in same-sex families and their children are disadvantaged by the lack of legal recognition of their relationships. And that is true for any people whose relationships are not legally recognized, including polyamorous people. Like, that legal logic is sound. But I said, but I want to be clear. Oh, and you have to understand that, you know, I was on some HuffPost Live, I think it was, and they had this marquee, you know, under my face, and it said, Andy Izenson, polyamorous lawyer. And I was like, I just had business cards made. But I said, but I want to be clear, I also don't care. Because in mediation we have this thing called, the distinction is between positions and interests. And your position in mediation is what you say you want, what you think you want, the practical thing. And your interest is why you want that, what's motivating you, what's underlying that desire. And so in divorce mediation, which is how we keep the lights on, and it does not help with an anti-marriage ethic, by the way, just, in divorce mediation, what that looks like is someone will say, I want $100,000, and you'll say, okay, why? And they'll say, well, we'll get into it, and they'll say something like, well, I need to leave the house where we are living together, and I want to feel secure in being able to put down a down payment on a new house, so that I don't have to rent, so that I can feel stable, and all of these things. And so the position is, I want 100 grand, and the interest is, I want to feel stable in where I live, right? You see that difference? And so in this discourse, the position being, we want marriage, the interests underlying it are things that make a lot of sense, right? And they make sense for gay people, they make sense for polyamorous people, they make sense for all the rest of us too. We want financial stability, we want to have access to things like immigration benefits, we want to have parenting rights, we want to have health care. I would like to have health care, that would be. But so if we go underneath that, we look at the interests and we say, okay, so if we want to talk about marriage so that we can talk about healthcare, let's just talk about healthcare. If we want to talk about marriage, and this is true for polyamorous people as well, if we want polymarriage so that a polyfamily can feel secure in their parenting, let's just talk about parenting rights, right? And so it's the same logic. So I said, yes, but I don't care. And then the headline was like, polyamorous lawyer says that polyamorous marriage is next. Haha. Yeah, it turns out that interviews are not, they're not very straightforward. It's fine. And so we think about this walled garden of rights and benefits that are associated with marriage. And of course, no matter how carefully we try and get ourselves in the door, we're going to be slamming the door in somebody else's face behind us. And so the work that I do is about trying to reach into the garden and take the things out of it, and make them more widely available through the intra-family work and the work that is about easing the movement of the family through the institutions that it has to interact with. And so practically what that looks like is identifying, so the medium of the work is human connection, right? And there are a lot of different ways that people can be connected to one another, that adults can be connected to one another, and that adults and children can be connected to one another. And our job is to disentangle all of those ways. We're talking about cohabitation, we're talking about financial interdependence, we're talking about sharing healthcare, we're talking about sharing advanced directives, we're talking about romance, we're talking about sexual intimacy, like all of these different things, pulling them apart and saying, okay, so marriage is the assumption that you want all of these things and you want them all with the same person, and that's goofy. And so let's identify which of these things these clients actually want to have and with whom, and how do we effectuate those specifically and individually. And sometimes it looks like contracts, sometimes it looks like filling out forms, sometimes it looks like making stuff up and hoping it works, but it's about particularizing and unbundling all of the things that are currently stuck to the idea of marriage. So I know I've been rambling for a while, so I'm just going to real quick talk about my favorite housing law case, because I can't get a microphone in my hand without talking about it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Ricky. I feel like I've told you about this a million times. So there's this housing law case in New York. It's called Braschi versus Stahl, and I yell about it every chance I get because I think it's really important. And then people are like, "Don't have a favorite housing law case, Andy. That's really dorky." But it's really important. Okay. So it was in 1988, and there was this gay couple, and it was kind of a May-December thing. One of them was like, I think he was in his late 50s, early 60s, and one of them was early 20s. It was cute, and they were living together in the older partner's rent-stabilized apartment. You're probably mostly from New York. I don't have to explain rent stabilization, right? I do? Okay, so rent stabilization is really, really important in New York housing law because it is if you have a rent stabilized lease, it means that your landlord can't raise your rent either at all or by more than a very small certain amount every year. And so it gives you a measure of safety because it means your rent's not going to get hiked up by 400% the next time you get a lease, so you're not going to lose your housing all at once. And so there are a lot of rules around rent-stabilized leases because they're very, very valuable and very, very desired. And obviously landlords don't like them because they can't hike up your rent, kick you out, flip the apartment, and sell it as a condo. So the older partner was on this rent stabilized lease in the apartment. His younger partner lived with him, and they lived together in that apartment for, I think it was about 10 years. And they had a regular family life. They went grocery shopping together, they had bank accounts together, they cooked dinner together. It was just what you would think of when you think of a regular day-to-day family life. And then the older partner contracted HIV, and he hung on for a little while, and then he died. And the younger partner went to the landlord and he said, this is the other thing about rent stabilization, is that it passes through family relationships. So if you have a rent stabilized lease, your spouse can take it over, your child can take it over, but they want to limit who can take it over because landlords don't want to keep those rent stabilized leases. And so Brashi, the younger partner, went to the landlord and said, I'm family, I count as family. I should get to stay on this lease. I don't want to lose my home that I've lived in for 10 years with my partner. I count. And the landlord said, nope. Remember, this is 1988. This is years and years before same-sex marriage was even a twinkle in Joe Solmonizzi's eye. And so they were like, that's not, you're strange homosexuals. That's not a real thing. You have to get out. And he sued about it. And the court came down with this unbelievably progressive and quite beautiful opinion about what family means. And there was a bullet-pointed list of what factors, as far as this judge was concerned, meant that you count as family. Are there indicia of permanence and stability? Do you share daily family life? Do you share family tasks? Do you share finances? Are you listed as each other's power of attorney and healthcare proxy? Are you doing what you can to indicate that you are going to be practically and emotionally there for each other no matter what? That's family. And so this judge came down and said, this is a family relationship. This counts. Looking at it along these lines, this is what family means. And the judge basically said that legal recognition of family life should be based on, and I'm going to try and remember the exact quote here. Oh, thank you. It's on the reality of daily family life rather than on legal fictions like a marriage certificate or an adoption order. And this was 1988, right? And how far we've come. And so I like to think about, and it's not really good law, and anymore. It's not effective precedent because it was a low court, and so it's more a useful anecdote than useful legal precedent. But I think about this is how using Brashi, in fact, is how the segment of my family that I currently live with got our apartment. There are 6 of us, and we live just like you, on a street that's zoned single family. And so we went to the open house, and we were talking to the landlord, and she said, "Well, you all seem super nice, but this street is zoned single family." And I was like, "So I have to convince this feathered hair Connecticut lady that filling her house with transsexuals constitutes a single family. I've been training my entire life for this moment." So I sat it out in the living room and I was like, all right, listen, Brashi versus Stahl, 1988, here we go. I mean, so it's great, right? I have this beautiful house, we have a little backyard, there's a dog whose name is Lady Pants, it's wonderful. Yeah, she's great, she smells really bad, but I love her. It's wonderful, and we've been living there for 3 years, and also, we are in violation of zoning law. Our lease is a lie. And the landlord knows that. She could kick us out at any time. It is a beautiful and loving and wonderful housing situation, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. And also, it is inherently unstable because my family is not real as far as the law is concerned. Bullshit. So I think about Brashi, and I think about the universe forking at Brashi. And in the universe that we live in, everyone was like, that seems nice, but what if we got gay marriage instead? And so we went in that direction. We just took it and ran with it. But I think about what that other fork of the universe would be, where they'd taken the precedent that was set in Brashi, and advocates had said, okay, so we've got this idea of family being based on these indicia of permanence and stability and daily family life. That as a legal concept, let's take that, let's run with that. Let's build policy and a movement around that. And I think about what that world would look like today, 28 years later. And I conceptualize my job as pushing our universe a little bit closer to that one. So that's what I do every day. And so I want to end by quoting Carol Queen, because I also do that in every talk I give. At the Woodhull Summit a couple of years ago, Carol Queen keynoted, and she's wonderful. She runs the Center for Sexual Pleasure and Health in San Francisco. And she's, you have to imagine, she looks kind of like an Edward Gorey character, like her glasses are bigger than mine, and she has giant gray hair. And she came out and she sort of banged her hand on the podium and she said, you know what's wrong with this damn world? Ahistoricity. And that one sentence, I think that was 2013, is that right?
I think it was, yes.
That sentence has been bouncing around inside my head ever since. Because if we conceptualize our jobs as this generation of activists as to heal the world single-handedly without considering our heritage, without considering our history, without considering who the giants are whose shoulders we stand on, we can't not fail. And so in bringing in this history and trying to reconnect with it, we have to conceptualize ourselves as a link in a chain. That our job is to stand, stand shoulder to shoulder with those who came before us and those who come after us, and do our part in the work, not to destroy ourselves, trying to do everything ourselves. Thanks for listening to me rant, and I will turn the mic back to you now.
Thank you, Andy.